Hello, my name is Valerie Parente, and I'm going to do a poetry reading and analysis from my collection Rather Be Haunted. And let's see which pieces I'll want to read today. Let's do Grand Scheme. Alright. I always felt like my mind was too big to fit inside me, that any attempt at fully articulating my thoughts would surely be a masterpiece, because the universe is always trying to whisper her poetry, and if I can capture just one conscious stream, then all the world's pain would be worth it in the grand scheme. Alright, so this was written on December 3rd of 2019. So I believe grand scheme, let's see. Yeah, so I believe grand scheme is about this concept of when you're writing, at least for me, I've had this experience. It's when you're writing and it feels a little too easy and effortless, and like you're not doing a lot of thinking. You're kind of just putting to paper these thoughts that are automatically coming through your head instead of really sitting there and attempting to formulate rhymes and formulate lines. So grand scheme is that whole idea. It's that I believe, I think a lot of artists say this. I remember some interview with Michael Jackson when he said it, that sometimes it feels like the universe gives him his lyrics and the music and writes it, and he's just the vessel that receives it and puts it out there. So that's kind of what grand scheme is about. Let's look at these particular lines. I always felt like my mind was too big to fit inside me. That's feeling like there's this collective conscience that you're tapping into. It's not just your conscience, it's this grand scheme of consciousness. That any attempt at fully articulating my thoughts would surely be a masterpiece, because there's just so much going on in there to really be able to fully articulate it. That would be impressive. That's how it feels when your mind is so full and feels like it's more than just your mind that's tapping through this little brain that kind of acts like a radio, picking up on different voices. So that any attempt at fully articulating my thoughts would surely be a masterpiece, because the universe is always trying to whisper her poetry, and if I can capture just one conscious stream, then all the world's pain would be worth it in the grand scheme. So for me, when I have a bad day, a very healthy outlet is to be able to create art. So even if it's not particularly art that explains my bad day away, if it's just art in general, drawings, paintings, writing, as long as I can create something by the end of that day, I feel like the pain that I was in or whatever negative emotions I was feeling were worth it. And that's kind of what this is saying. So if I can capture just one, so the universe is always trying to whisper her poetry, just this ether of words that are existing that don't feel like I'm creating them. They feel like they just exist and I'm tapping into it. So if the universe is always whispering her own poetry, and if I can just capture one conscious stream of this collective conscious's thoughts, then all the world's pain, which is a very grandiose statement, but that's how it feels. It feels like then all the world's pain would be worth it in the grand scheme. It feels like the pain I'm in and the suffering, not that I've suffered much in my life, I've had a very good life, but any pain or any distress that I felt feels worth it by the end of the day if I can formulate a word or form a picture. Just any kind of creative outlet makes the pain that I'm in feel worth it, because whether you are very explicitly writing something about how your day was bad, or if you're just writing something with the background mindset of being, I'm in a bad space, no matter what, the art that you create on a bad day, I believe, has been influenced by whatever you've been through that day. Even if you're not outwardly creating art that shows explicitly and is obvious that this was written or this was painted when someone was mean to me, when I lost a friend, blah, blah, blah. So just any kind of pain in this world feels worth it when I'm able to write and express myself and paint or draw, whatever. be artistic in any way. It feels like it's okay, and it feels like I am connecting with something greater than just this brain, but a collective conscience. Maybe that's crazy, maybe that's not crazy, but that's just how it feels. So Grand Scheme is about that artistic process. What else can we read? We've got that one that I could read. Read that one. Okay, what about, we'll read, this is short, but this is called The Fear I Long For. And it was written on September 16th of 2019, a little over a year ago. The fear I long for. The truth is, I'm absolutely terrified of being anything but absolutely terrified, of being enough without having to prove myself, of feeling a touch without having to remove myself, of being the person I know I am in front of someone who understands. This reminds me of the whole concept of like being naked in front of someone, and I'm not just saying physically, but really being bare and having all of your feelings, all of your hidden fears just out there, putting yourself out there. That's what it reminds me of as I read it now. So let's go through specific lines. The truth is, I'm absolutely terrified of being anything but absolutely terrified. This is about love. This is about being scared of intimacy and love. I know that for a fact. So I'm absolutely terrified of being anything but absolutely terrified, of really being like attracted and not afraid, of being enough without having to prove myself. Something that I've gone through, and it's because of my, how do I word this in a way that's not offensive? I tend to be inclined to want the attention of the people who don't want to give me attention. And it's, maybe they don't say it out loud, I don't care about your existence, but there's a vibe where I feel like that challenge is something that I need to go after. I could have a million people in front of me who want to hear what I say, and one person who doesn't want to hear what I say, and I'll be attracted to the person who doesn't want to hear what I have to say. So that's what I think of when I see it says that I'm absolutely terrified of being enough without having to prove myself. I'm always getting myself in these situations where I am attracted to the chase, even though I hate the chase more than anything, but where I am constantly chasing something and feeling like I need to prove myself and feeling like I'm not good enough. And it gives me all this fuel for writing and artwork, my nice mannequin drawings, which I have some sitting right here. But there's always this chase with this, with these darker pieces. There's always this chase. And I'm scared of when the chase is over and I'm enough and someone's satisfied with me. Well, then where do I go mentally? I've never been, it's pretty, it sounds ungrateful, but I've never been really satisfied. So that scares me, the idea of being really satisfied and not feeling like I have to prove myself anymore. Creatively, what do I do when I feel like I don't have to prove myself anymore? Where do I draw inspiration from? So many of those things. So the next line, I'm terrified of feeling a touch without having to remove myself. I like how it rhymes, of being enough without having to prove myself, of feeling a touch without having to remove myself. There's 2 rhymes going in each line, the enough touch and then the prove myself, remove myself. Anyways, dissecting it. So of feeling a touch without having to remove myself. As you know, if you've watched my videos before or read my writing, I have very severe OCD, and that has manifested in many, many, many ways that you wouldn't even expect. But one of the most obvious ways is a fear of germs. So I do have a very acute fear of germs. I don't like being touched. I feel like, and I've explained this in my book In Touch, but I feel like there's a stain on me when someone touches me, and I didn't welcome that, which is almost always. So I've been feeling that way since that specific fear, feeling that way since the very end of 7th grade. I have some theories for why that happened, but that feeling is something I've had basically my whole adolescence and into my adulthood. My entire my entire adulthood so far, I have felt that way, and it really sucks because it's really hard to date, just be a good friend, hug someone. Just in so many ways, it's been tough. So I'm pretty terrified of feeling a touch without feeling like I have to remove myself and clean it and feeling like it's a stain. I'm pretty afraid of what that's like because I've never had that in my adult life. My, fully pruned brain at age 26 has never experienced that. And that scares me because unknown is scary. I don't know what that's like. And I'm sure it's amazing. I'm sure it's awesome when you don't feel like you have to remove yourself from any touch. But it terrifies me to be okay with that after for so long not being okay with that. And then the last 2 lines. Terrified of being the person I know I am in front of someone who understands. Again, always going after a chase and wanting to prove yourself, feeling like you have to prove yourself to someone. That's what I've been inclined to do for God knows what reason, but I'm terrified of finally feeling like, yes, this is me, this is the person I know I am, I don't have to prove it, in front of someone who just off the bat gets it. That's weird for me. I'm constantly explaining myself to people because I have weird quirks and weird emotional issues and sensitivities. So for someone to not need an explanation and for me to just be bare with all my emotions and sensitivities to someone and they just get it without me having to use any words, that is terrifying. And that's why this is called the fear I long for, because it's what I want more than anything, or so I think. Don't we all want that? Someone to just get it without having to prove ourselves, to be attracted to someone who's also attracted to you. No more chase. It's really scary. It's what I long for, but it's also my biggest fear, and my subconscious will go to hell and back to try and sabotage any possibility of that happening. I want it. Someone starts to show me these things that I want. Oh, I freak out and I run the other way. Super annoying. But I'm aware I do that. I'm aware the thing I long for more than anything, the connection and not having to explain myself anymore, is the thing that I'm afraid of more than anything, which is super interesting. Do other people experience that, where their deepest want is something they're so deeply afraid of? And for me, that's been the case my entire adult life and pretty much all of my adolescence. So it's a weird thing. It sucks, but the first step of getting over these types of mental hang-ups is just being able to recognize it. So the fact that I'm able to recognize it, put it in my art, write it down, that's one step closer to solving this mystery that is my tangled brain. And hopefully other people get what I'm saying, and that actually, adds some comfort to their conscience, because it's weird. And this weird being afraid of what you're attracted to is, I don't know if a lot of people experience that or talk about it openly. So I hope that offers some kind of solace that you're not alone in those very bizarre feelings. So the last poem I want to read is towards the end, and I've read this before, but I did not publish the video. So this poem is called Ghosts in My Room, and if you watched my explanation of Rather Be Haunted's title, you'll know that I made that the title to be a metaphor for emotions haunting you and feeling your own humanity, but I also came up with the haunted concept as a literal reference to me thinking I was seeing ghosts a year ago now in my room, because there was a 4-month period where I was waking up in the middle of the night and I was seeing, and this poem will explain what it visually looked like, but I was seeing what I could only rationalize to myself as that's a ghost. So let's read the poem, and it's very literal at explaining what happened. There's not going to be a lot of dissection. Ghosts in my room. I see ghosts in my room, maybe because I have room for them too. They flicker and repeat like static on TV, and I'm not sure why I can see these figures in front of me, but it happens in the middle of the night every single week. I feel like the images I perceive are from a dimension I shouldn't see. Always a body without a face, shadowy figures with no name, hosting a sentience in their flashing shapes. Sometimes it's one figure, sometimes it's 2 or 3. No matter the amount, they're always unique. A defining trait like a baseball cap or bangs, they always move in a particular way, and I can't tell if they know they're in my space. When I see those ghosts in the night, my recurrent thought is, you know I can see you, right? And it almost seems like they don't realize where they are, and I'm not sure why all of a sudden they turned up, but they've been showing up ever since my greatest loss. After 2 months, I asked one beside my bed, "How are you?" to the flashing silhouette. It gave me the middle finger after another motion in flickers, so I just laid back as it lingered. Some people tell me I should be afraid, that ghosts are an energy I shouldn't entertain, but I truly feel that they are harmless, and my intuition says that they have no ill intent. If anything, they feel like gentle friends. Some people say that I'm just hallucinating, that these beings are of my own making, but gut feelings never lie, and I know what I'm feeling inside, and I'm feeling that they're separate from my mind. I always give it a few seconds, look around to see if it's just in my head. When I look back, the images are still prevalent in all the same outlines and repetitive movements, and to be perfectly honest, I'm comforted by their existence. It sounds crazy. This was written on January 3rd. So, interestingly enough, I remember when I wrote this was at a time where I stopped seeing these images in the middle of the night. And when I say images, I know I just read it, but it was like, let me put this down so I can explain. I would wake up and I would see a silhouette that was humanoid. It was very much a human's shape. And this happened all the time, every week, but they always had a different figure. It was always a human, but sometimes it was a big potbelly figure. Sometimes it was a woman. Sometimes it was a little child. It was always different, but it didn't look like this cliche fog. It wasn't like that. It looked like static, and I sleep with the lights off. It was dark. I wake up. I see what looks like a human figure. I know it's not a real human because of the way that the image is static and it's flickering. It was constantly flickering. It looked like, and this is the best way I can describe it, I know I wrote that down, it looked like I was seeing a dimension that I wasn't supposed to be seeing. It didn't feel like it was from this dimension, that my 5 senses were seeing it. It felt like it was a different sense. It wasn't really sight. It wasn't really visual. It was this motion that I could tap into, and it felt like it was a human transposed onto this reality, but from a different reality. I know that sounds crazy, but that's how it felt. I'm just saying how it felt. It could have been in my head. I'm not saying it wasn't, but the interesting thing about these ghosts and their defining traits and their constant movements, and it was almost like a GIF that kept, like, there was always a movement, like an arm lifting or touching her head, and it was just on repeat. It was like a moment in time stuck on repeat. So the bizarre thing about those staticky ghosts aside from the fact that they were always moving and always different and always had a defining trait like bangs or a hat, was that when I noticed them, I would wake up, look at it, and I would think, are my eyes do they just need to adjust to the dark and it's really something in my room, like a coat or whatever? I would look away for a good few, like 5 seconds, and then I would look back, and sure enough, it was still there. That, as much as it seems like something that should have freaked me out, it did not freak me out. I had intuitively, and I wrote in gut feelings, it felt friendly. It didn't feel like something I wasn't, that wasn't welcome. It felt like a friend. And the weird thing about it was that it started at the end of August of 2019, and it went until December of 2019. And it's the only thing I could think of. I asked myself, what's different in my life? Why would I, if this was really ghosts and not just hallucinations, half awake dreams, if this really is ghosts, what changed in my life that I'm suddenly seeing this now? And the only thing I could think of was my dog of 13 years that I grew up with just passed away at the end of August. Right after she passed away, I started waking up and seeing these silhouettes. Not every night, but definitely every week. I thought that was weird. That was the only major thing in my life that had changed. And that's a big deal. It was devastating, and it's still devastating. It's been over a year, and it still doesn't feel real. But that was the only thing I could think of. And the only reason why I rationalize it as it had to do with that is because when it stopped right when I got a new dog. And I just don't think that could be a coincidence. Whether it was real spirits, and it did feel like it had a sentience that was outside of my own mind, but whether or not that was the reality, mentally, that's what I was going through in that period of time, that very awful grief of losing a pet. So if I was hallucinating it, it was still a good experience because it gave me so much comfort. Every time I saw the shapes and the flickering beings, I was so happy. I loved seeing them. And let's, more specifically, you might ask why when I'm referring to a certain line where I talk about one of the ghosts that gave me a middle finger. So, the middle finger. It, that should have scared me. So what happened after 2 months? So after 2 months, I would tell my friend every day when I was at work and bored or whatever, I would text him and be like, I saw another ghost last night. And this person was very cynical, but for some reason they believed me, or they acted like they did at least. And they said to me, well, why don't you talk to it? And why don't you talk to the ghost? Why don't you actually try to communicate? You always just see it and then go back to bed. Why don't you ask it how it is? And I don't know why I never thought of that, but I was like, oh yeah, that's true. I should ask how it is. So sure enough, the next time I saw one, it was to the left of my bed. It looked like a tall man, just this flickering, static-y tall man that was constantly lifting its arm to a cap. It looked like he had a cap on. And I sat up and I go, hi, how are you? And I kid you not, the flashing silhouette straight up just did this in response. And kept repeating this. So it got caught in a motion of giving me the middle finger. And I just literally look at it and I go, okay. And then I lie back down and go to bed. And even then, I didn't feel scared. So that was a really weird experience because I should have been scared, because if you're responding to how are you and you're a ghost and you give them the middle finger, I feel like that's not positive energy. But the vibe I was getting was that it was still friendly. And I told myself, I think when I lied back down, I was like, oh, you don't know if it was the middle finger. It could have been the number 1. But then I thought about it the next morning and I'm like, yeah, the middle finger would be a proper response to how are you. Doing number 1 isn't really a proper response. So that was really cool. I told all my coworkers about that. I think they all thought I was crazy. But let's see. So let's just finish it off saying this. This is the second to last stanza. Some people say that I'm just hallucinating, that these beings are of my own making, but gut feelings never lie. and I know what I'm feeling inside. And I'm feeling that they're separate from my mind. I kind of explained that already, but that is how it felt. It did not feel like it was a creation of my own conscience. But hey, who knows? It was weird. It was a weird time. And it finishes off. I always give it a few seconds, look around and see if it's just in my head. When I look back, the images are still prevalent in all the same outlines and repetitive movements. And to be perfectly honest, I'm comforted by their existence. That's, I guess, a great way to end it, because it was a positive experience. It was really cool. I have not had it happen for almost a full year, though. It stopped when we got my dog, and I never saw them again. Never woke up in the middle of the night and saw these weird humanoid silhouettes, always with a different defining trait and or feature, and stuck in a repetitive movement on repeat like a GIF. So ending on that note, you might think I'm crazy. I'm just saying what I saw, but that poem is one of the main inspirations for the title, Rather Be Haunted. So that is that. Those were 3 poems, and I hope you liked them. I hope maybe they offered you some comfort for your own mental health. And if you want to buy the book, it's on Amazon, and it's Rather Be Haunted by Valerie Parente. If you don't want to buy it, check out my website, because I do publish my work on there, and that's valerieparente.com. Thank you. Bye.